Hello, this is the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm your host, Coach Red Pill, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Benway. Dr. Benway, why don't you take it away? We're going to be talking about credentials. Do you have the credentials to be doing this podcast? Did you go to an institute or an Ivy League school that taught you Podcasting 101? Did you get your graduate degree in Podcasting 101? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
I have an MPA, a Master of Podcast Administration. And I want you to know
I'm
that
sure that there's such a thing somewhere. Oh man!
And I want you to know that my purple-haired professor is a little bit offended by the notion that you would consider such a prestigious position a matter of humor.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Zur, not her. Zur was very offended. Yeah.
One of her shrunken ovaries shriveled up even more as a result of what you just said. So, it's all on you. But no, yeah, so it's funny because we have discussions left, right, and center all the time, as our listeners know. And one of the things that came up a number of times, which we just want to hit right out of the gate, is this whole idea that in our society, we just love to keep credentializing and over-credentializing whatever and whatnot. And it's funny because, one of the jokes about, they say white people, it's really everybody, is that everybody now has to have an advanced degree, a master's degree, or, be it an MFA, a law degree, a master's of, culinary excellence, or come up with whatever you want, you can get it. Even certifications, which used to be just limited to things like the financial industry to prove that, hey, you actually know what the fuck you're talking about when you say, you're a fiduciary. But now it's just going to every fucking thing. And it's like, what's the deal? What's the point? What are you really getting? I would say you're probably getting less than you think, but that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah, because the thing that we're all realizing, Benway and I were talking about the fact that, everybody has to have a college degree now because it's become this notion that to have a good life, you have to have a college degree, which goes back to the notion that back in the day, the top 10% of the population on the socioeconomic ladder, they went to college. Not all of them, but most of them who are in the top 10%. And so some bright moron thought to himself, hey, well, if the top 10% have the socioeconomic ladder have to go to college, if everybody goes to college, then they'll all be in the top 10% of the socioeconomic ladder, which is just ridiculous, right? It's basically it's credential inflation. I once heard a great explanation as to what inflation was, price inflation, which is, of course, that, imagine everybody's at a stadium. And they're all sitting down. And then one person stands up to get a better view. So the person behind him also has to wind up standing up so that they can see, because the person in front of them stood up and therefore blocked their view. And so by the end of it, everybody in the stadium stood up and everybody's more uncomfortable. And they're all seeing things just as well as they were seeing it before. And so, yeah, that's basically credentialism. Everybody has to get a BA. Everybody has to get a master's of some sort. And they're no better off than before. I mean, I would venture to argue that the people who are getting masters today are basically the people who 50 years ago were getting just a BA. It's the same thing, but with a whole lot more fucking debt. And the empty credentialism, I think, is creating catastrophic effects. I mean, my argument is that it's creating catastrophic effects because kids are taking on so much fucking debt to pay for this useless education, and it is fucking useless, that they're postponing really important decisions like when to get married, when to have kids, when to buy their first home. Those important decisions, they are financially unable to carry them out because they have the student loans that are killing them. I mean, we all know this. And so it just seems ridiculous. And as a society, it's like we're on autopilot on this issue and nobody's making a stink about it.
Yeah, and my thought as to partly why this is the case is it's an externality of our general decision we had, arguably starting, the whole story isn't about this, but it kind of starts with after World War II, and you had the GI Bill, and everybody who kind of went to the war is going to be able to go to college here. This notion that everybody has to go to college because that college degree means you're going to do better in life, creates a situation because, what does a degree ultimately do at a certain point? It helps someone when they're looking to fill a job to say, okay, I got 500 names to look at. Who are the ones that I can quickly look at to say, okay, I narrowed it down to a few people that I can talk to, and then I can figure out if they're ready for the job. When you have a world where literally everybody has a college degree, a bachelor's degree, you think to yourself, fuck, that's not a good mechanism anymore. I'm just going to still get 600, 700,000 names.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to figure out some other way to get people narrowed down.
Masters.
yeah, masters of this, an MBA, whatever. It's like, at least for a law degree, you could say you're actually learning the fucking details of the law. But even that's increasingly bullshit, because you're studying for the bar is really what's going to get you allowed to be a fucking lawyer.
Yeah.
But that's. Go ahead.
I don't know how many guys who've gotten masters who have told me that it was a waste of their fucking time. That they just needed the credential in order to bump up their salary and for whatever they were doing, but they didn't actually learn anything. And this goes doubly so for MBA programs. MBA programs are just a waste of fucking time.
Well, this is really in my wheelhouse, because I'm in consulting and MBA, and I'll tell you, for a long time, MBA was like, the key jump when you're in consulting in most organizations. Like, there's a job for when you're right out of undergraduate, and then there's a job after your MBA. And an analyst is someone who just came out of undergraduate. You do the analyst program for a few years, you go to your MBA school, you come back and you're an associate and you're really doing work. A lot more what I'm seeing now in consulting, which is interesting, just to say, look, we're getting a lot of the people who are coming out of the MBA programs, and yeah, they got some soft skills, but it's not as good as experience. And so I've seen a lot more people who are willing to say, you know what, if you got a stellar analyst who really knows his chops and has been on enough projects, fuck it, he can bypass that program. We'll make him an associate. That actually happened to me. I did not go to the MBA program. I'm an associate now. Senior associate. At this point, I don't think I will.
I mean, let me phrase it. Do you need to for your career, for career advancement?
At this point, no. The experience is much more substantial than any MBA program is going to be. Now, here's the thing. In some institutions, they still think the MBA means something, because a lot of people have MBAs. And so you get a few people who feel like, I need to justify my degree in order to, this, that, and the other. So they'll look to their fellow MBAs. But frankly, it's not halting me in my position right now. And if I wanted to go to another be a consulting firm or even on a client side, they wouldn't really care that much, because I just have much too much exposure to real problems and real business, experience. So they don't give a shit.
Yeah. Well, in the things that I've always done, it's always been an issue of craft. And getting an MFA, a Master's of Fine Arts, it doesn't really help. Insofar as writing, it actually hurts. It certainly hurts insofar as professional commercial writing is concerned. In professional commercial writing, what you have to do is be good at your craft. And the only way to get good at your craft is just to practice it incessantly. Stephen Cannell, the big-time TV producer, and in TV, the writer-producer is king. Just as in film, it's the writer-director is king. Okay, so the writer-producer king, Stephen Cannell, and he is a king. He did like a bunch of shows, including...
Just to be clear, he's the guy who at the end of his programs, they show him flapping on the typewriter and he pulls his paper out and it becomes this Cannell Group logo. Is that right?
Yeah, that's him. And
okay.
he's a big guy. A big guy in the sense of a big career. And an extremely rich man. Well, I think he passed away, but irrespective.
Yeah, he died a few years ago.
Yeah, I once heard him speak, and he said that the way he got good at being a writer was that he would crank out 20 pages of 20 TV pages of script every day. That's roughly the equivalent of, say, 2,000 words of prose, roughly, okay? Because it sounds like a lot, 20 pages every day, but the formatting is such...
The spacing of the format, yeah.
Yeah. It's such that in terms of actual word count, it would be roughly around 1,500 to 2,000 words, which is roughly, 7-8 pages of dense prose. Okay, it's a lot of work.
It's work. It's work, but it's manageable work.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was his routine. And, it was eminently successful because he got goddamn good at it, because ultimately it is a craft. You study other scripts of other successful shows, and you write more scripts. And so, like, in my own case, I got an Ivy League degree. I was never asked to prove that I had such an Ivy League degree, and nobody really even gave a shit. It was not relevant. Never. Insofar as what I was doing. In point of fact, it was a complete waste of time. I wound up paying $18,000 worth of student loans. That was my debt burden when I graduated from college, which is, at the time was sort of high to medium kind of, This was back in 95, right? How could I put it? I could have just skipped college altogether and just practiced writing, and I would have gotten the same gigs. College was just pointless. I know that, of course, there are some occupations where you need college. I mean, obviously, doctor, for instance. That's an easy example. But overall, I think that this overcreditation is just, And it's not just in education, it's everywhere.
Well, like I said, here's the thing. In a certain world, because we were the liberal education, people mistake the purposes of the education, right? The liberal education, yes, we're going to know all these various interdisciplinary activities, and they're going to make you richer and everything, richer person. I don't necessarily mean financially, although there's an element of that. But the idea was, if you went to a liberal school, you were being programmed to be a managerial class of some kind or another. But that the intent behind those programs, they know there weren't supposed to be many of those programs, because it was just to be, for this particular class of leadership, we're preparing them, they're going to go on. That by definition, everybody cannot do that, because everybody cannot be a leader.
Yeah.
So you're
You need
just
some
fucking
Indians.
up you're just fucking up the mechanism, and then the mechanism gets reconstructed. And like your point, you're going to have all this extra debt because you got to get another fucking degree to go on. The thing is, most people don't need this, right? Like you had mentioned, you were doing a craft, a creative craft. Your book of business is what you need. My friend wants to get into advertising this. I said, what you need to do is just find little gigs and put your portfolio, build up. And when you go to an offer and said, what have you done? You could, throw that at them. You're not going to get, an advertising advanced degree and people think you're going to do better at it. No, it's doing the grind.
Yeah.
You need to be able to do the grind.
Yeah. But the thing is, see, people feel insecure about it because it's an easy way. It's an easy path. And I suppose that's the thing that separates the people who are truly groundbreaking from the also-rans. The people who are truly groundbreaking, like Zuckerberg, like Bill Gates, both of them went to Harvard for like a semester, less than a year. And they both realized it was a waste of their fucking time. It wasn't what they wanted. Yeah, they'd get the credential, but what would they be good at? They'd be good at being somebody else's employee, but they wanted to do their own shit. Therefore, they realized, I don't need to be here. I can move on. And they did. I think that the guy who's really going to make it as an entrepreneur doesn't need the credential. But here's the other thing, see. I think that we glorify that entrepreneur spirit. And we don't understand that there are some people who just don't fit in the entrepreneurial mold. And they should not try for it. And they should be thinking to themselves, yeah, I do need the credentials because this is what I'm good at mentally or whatever. But I guess my whole argument would be try to reduce the amount of bullshit credentialism that you need. Because, some of it is just excessive. I get it on my fucking Twitter feed. There's like a certificate in blockchain. I get it on my fucking Twitter feed. What the fuck is that?
Well, here's the thing. I think people are operating under the wrong pretext. And I think that's the problem. I think the only thing you need education credential-wise is it's an excuse to get you in the fucking door. Yeah. Right? To get the job, to get the experience. From then on, your experience is king. That leads you to where you need to go. I think what's happening for credentialization, some people think that's going to get them the job, but I think there's something worse going on. People think that the credential itself is the end. Because I have an MBA or this, that I owed something. And this is what I'll also tell you this that happens as well, and I think it's related. A number of businesses don't like hiring from certain MBA programs because, especially, let's say, Harvard MBA. Because the Harvard MBA thinks he should be the CEO right now.
Yeah.
He thinks, I have this accreditation now. I should be able to do this and the other. And they're like, you got to fucking learn, honey. You're going to be a manager of this little piddling group here first, and then prove that you can do it. All Harvard MBA did for me was to just prove to you that I can give you the job and you won't fuck up completely.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the attitude. People think that the credentials in and of themselves are the goal. And what that means is people think that the theory of what they're doing is all that they need to do well. And it's a joke because half of these master's programs are about practical matters, right? Yeah. MBA and business administration is all about practical, experiential leadership.
Yeah, there's that old chestnut, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is. And this is very true. And the people who get these highfalutin degrees, they think that, they were able to get the degree, therefore they should be able to drive the Ferrari first day out of driving school. That is, run the whole mammoth company. They should be the CEO of the thing. And here's something I've noticed that's really interesting. The graduates of bright, shiny MBA schools, they never amount to much. They earn a decent living, sometimes a very good living. But they're never like the really top tier guys. The top tier guys, they always went to like a secondary school. Have you noticed?
Well, I'll tell you, like when you do get the high performers out of that MBA program, I've seen it. It's a similar pattern. It's where you're going, because one of the big guys at my firm is this way, and another big guy at a client company is this way. Yeah, they may have gone to Harvard MBA, but you look at their old school, it's a lesser school, like
Oh,
second tier,
yeah.
maybe like William and Mary
Like their
Grinnell,
college.
all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what that means is all it is. I have this. Look, you guys who went to a high school and undergraduate, I pulled that. I got it from you. Now I'm moving on. That is just their little star on their lapel.
Actually, no.
Right.
Let me rephrase that. It's the Ivy League people. Look, I follow like every guy who went to a name brand school. You check out the alumni magazine, right?
Mhm.
You went to name brand school. I bet you get that fucking magazine that lists at the back pages like every year
What
what the
everybody is
yeah
doing. Yeah.
the class
I
knows.
get two of them now. They give me two fucking magazines. There's the same thing. They just said more content. One's in a little copy. It's like, I don't need it.
Yeah, the funny thing is that I was living in South America and I get the fucking thing down there to South America, right? And they kept asking me to donate money to the college for the college alumni fund to get the magazine. I never donated, and yet I religiously got the fucking magazine. You know?
Yep. Same.
Uh,
I intentionally don't donate to my school because
oh
they
yeah,
got enough out of me.
yeah, yeah. Ditto here. I don't. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. See, all those all those guys who went to big name colleges, Ivy Leagues, and all the rest of it, they don't amount to much. I mean, it's really funny. They don't. It's like they don't have such a successful life. I think what it is that see the guys who get into in these later generations. I think that the guys who get into the top tier schools are compliant in a way that they are neutered in life. Afterward, they don't, because in my own case, like I went to an Ivy League school, sure, but I'd done shit because I got kicked out of college twice in South America because I was partying and chasing girls, basically. And then wound up getting kicked out of home and wandering around South America teaching English for like 3-4 years. What was it? 80, 70, wait, 4 years of traveling around South America, almost 4 years of traveling around and teaching English, right? And then I went to college and I had my shit together, right? And I'd had like a life. And so, for me, it was a good experience to actually be there learning shit. I was interested in that. I took classes that I was interested in, not to maintain my GPA or anything like that. Anyway, the point that happened to me was that all the other kids who were there, they were the brightest people in their high school, the spotless people, and they never got anywhere in life. And I think that that's a serious problem that we're having in our society because we're adoring these spotless people, but see, it's the scuff marks that make people, the failures that make them not only interesting but capable. Spotless people
Well,
are not
here's the thing.
capable.
Well, here's the thing. It is basically, in my mind, not very much difference between those, the high school, football player captain who peaked in high school, and then these guys. They just
Yeah,
peaked at a slightly later time.
yeah,
The idea like, oh, I did very well. I went to Harvard MBA and I was the top of my class. It's like, well, that's the laurel upon which you rest,
yeah,
right? And I'm not saying in every last Harvard MBA is a failure because the Harvard MBA, you're not going to get zero. Right. But the idea is, I think for a lot of those guys, the success was kind of independent of the MBA. And the joke about a lot of graduate programs is they select people who they know are going to be successful anyway. So the program doesn't really give them anything. It's just they can say, here's our success rate. We pick people who would have been successful
anyway,
regardless of us to be
yeah,
in the program.
yeah,
This is so
exactly.
common. Don't let them fool you.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I do
yeah.
think a lot of guys are like that. That idea, like, I'm going to rest on this credential and kind of ease through, because
Escape.
a lot of them become like just middle level managerial class.
Yeah, with a big 6-figure income, but they actually don't contribute much to society. They're kind of like the guys that you really wish the commies would show up and shoot, because a lot of times they don't do fucking shit, right? It's really funny because I'm thinking about the valedictorian of my college class. She was like a big brain. She got straight A's. I mean, like literally straight A's. Okay. And she was like studying, biology to become a doctor or some shit. And she never amounted to anything. I can't recall what she did, but it wasn't like very impressive. I remember seeing some college note. And I remember I was like, wow, I was surprised that it was just not that big of a deal, you know? Oh God, randomly here, but in those college notes, one time, okay, there was this girl, okay? Let's call her N, Okay, N as in Nancy. Let's call her Nancy. Okay, that's not her real name, but it's just a handy moniker. She was fucking gorgeous. I mean, she was just smoking, right? And not only that, but she was like a kind and decent person. You could tell. You could tell that she was just a nice person. Okay. Never heard anything bad said about her or whatever. She's just a nice, kind, decent person. You could tell. You could tell that she was just, one of those people who were like really, like, just that quality, right? And she had this
Yeah.
piece of shit boyfriend. I remember one time I'm walking to the cafeteria and I'm passing the hall. It was like there was like the school mailboxes, and then there was a cafeteria. And I'm walking down that hallway towards the cafeteria, and she and her boyfriend are having like a fight, and she's like crying in the fucking hallway, and all the people are passing by, and everybody's just like cringing, right? Because shit, you don't want to be in the middle of a boyfriend girlfriend fight, and it's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and okay, and he treated her like dirt, right? And finally, I opened the college class notes, right? And she's saying Nancy is written to the secretary of her class, of my class, saying, "Oh, and I finally they're roughly 40 years old at this time, and Jim or whoever the name of the guy was, John and I finally got married. After all our ups and downs, we finally got married." And she's like 40, no kids, right? And she
Of
finally
course.
married this piece of shit, right? And it was just like so sad. You hear those stories. I don't know if because there are all kinds of
Well,
psychodramas that you hear in the class notes, and it's just astonishing.
well, it's funny. I wanted to kind of fuck with my class notes once when they had, because what I was going to write it in such a way is because they have class of
Yeah.
'07 or something,
Right.
and you'd say so and so's done this, so and so's done this. I wanted to come up with a story so that it would read. You'd finish reading the person above me, and I would say my note would be, but unlike this failure above, I did blah blah blah. They would never let it pass, but that's the kind of attitude I have reading those. It's like it's usually someone's getting married, someone is like the other section of our magazine, unfortunately, is they said like alumni have published this book. Ooh, because we still
When
have
I published
academic.
books, the motherfuckers didn't run anything about it, not a goddamn thing. And so I was like, fuck them. I mean, like, I thought that was just fucking uncalled for. And so, like, I started like sending notes that were totally untrue. Like, once I said, oh, I was like married, but my wife died of cancer, it was leukemia. And basically I was like Oliver in Love Story, right? And I was saying shit like, oh, she studied, music in Harvard, and she loved Bartok and shit like that. And she knew how to play the Brandenburg concertos on piano. And we had this lovely marriage, and it was so romantic and shit like that. And she told me that love means never having to say you're sorry, right? And shit
And she
like,
looked exactly like Ally
yeah,
McGraw, and
exactly.
and
Yeah.
Steve McQueen ran off and fucked her.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, see, it was no, they didn't let it pass, And after that, I think that they took all my notes with a grain of salt, even when I actually did shit. Okay, I actually must have like written to them like a couple of times, but at one time, yeah, I totally fucked with them, and they didn't run it, which is a shame because it was pretty fun. It would have been fucking funny, but
Because like part of the reason I wanted to bring up the magazines as well, because there are also variations on that accreditation theme. It's like the little pins that you put on your, like I said, your lapel, so you can show off to everybody. Look at all these things I've got. Aren't I a great person?
well, if you think about it,
That's
medals
the
are
level
that.
of value all this shit is.
Well, you can think that military medals are basically accreditation to a certain extent, couldn't you?
You could, but at the very least, your ass was on the line on those.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, if you but if it's,
Because like one of the things I absolutely hate in a lot of regards, and it's similar to this, are civilian medals in most instances. Because and ironically enough cheapens the actual awards, like of gallantry and bravery in battle. And then and then when you have like so and so is going to get the the domestic award for this, that, or the other because he taught a robot to say racism is bad.
yeah, yeah. Oh, the one that really got me upset was that they were giving medals to drone operators for the drone strikes, and I thought to myself, my God, they're in fucking Las Vegas, and they're gonna give these fuckers like medals for like essentially playing video games
I was
where
about to
somebody
say, yeah.
dies. Yeah. I mean, poor civilians fucking die, and they're gonna get fucking medals. I thought that was disgusting, personally. I mean, at least the son of a bitch who was flying the bomber that's dropping the 10,000-pound bombs on civilians. Maybe he'll be shot down too. And in Vietnam, it happened all the time. So maybe there's some risk there. But like a drone operator, what fucking bravery is that? I think it's pathetic.
Because we're actually getting into the meat of the problem, I think, here, right? To me,
Everybody
a
wants to be
citation, an
special.
well, yeah, but that precisely, because to me, like a citation, award, and accreditation means this guy has put himself through some sort of shit that says this guy can do something special,
Right?
And we're going to recognize that. And just going through some sort of program, MFA, MBA, whatever master's degree you want to throw, you haven't been put through anything. You've only been put through the ringer of having to write a paper in most MBA, not MBAs, excuse me, most master's programs like humanities masters. In MBA, you had a couple tests and you did the GMAT, nothing really rigorous. And so we're pretending we've achieved more than you really did. Is the issue, right? And that's the thing. And sorry, I've like kind of lost my train of thought because I'm just thinking to myself, what are we ultimately? Because there's negative after effects of this, which are horrific in a lot of ways. You already mentioned one, the financial aspect. You've just added another, in the case of an MBA program, 100 to 200 grand of debt to you. I think for a lot, most master's programs, I'd say between 20 to 50 grand.
Yeah, and also I had a question: how many years would it take to pay back that MBA program? Is the bump up in salary worth it? How many years does it take to pay it off? 10 years? If it's 10 years, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the only way people justify it is to say they have access to jobs they wouldn't have before. But because I've already breached that wall, it really is zero benefit to me. That's why I'm not going to do it.
No, I mean,
because it would just be
a waste of time and money. Yeah. Because I mean, I completely agree. I think it's just stupid.
And you brought up a good point, which I always thought was the compelling thing that we really need to consider. Whenever somebody says, "Oh, the problem to poverty is," I'm doing the Bernie Sanders voice because why not? The problem with poverty is you need to educate your way out to the middle class. I mean, like, no, that's not how it works. Because to your point, you're delaying key decisions that defined the middle class, which was by my mid 20s or let's say late 20s, I'm married. By my late 20s, if definitely by your early 30s, you have at least one kid. And around that time is you have your first home, not an apartment that you rent, a fucking home.
Yeah, you own.
Could be a condo, could be a home. There was even a concept at one point, and this is what's going to make people laugh. There was a concept of a starter home first.
Yeah.
The idea that not only are you going to buy a home in your life, when you start it out, you have a smaller home, and then you upgrade to a bigger home.
Yeah, I mean, that's what my parents did. I mean, when I was born, they lived in a small apartment in Los Angeles. And my old man was studying, and then the Allende government happened, and so they couldn't go back to Chile, and so they bought a starter home. It was in the street called Delco, and in Los Angeles, and you look at it now, and it's these small little houses with their own lot, of like I don't know how many square feet the lot. It's not that big, but there are tiny little houses in like the San Fernando Valley, in a tiny little subdivision. And yeah, that's how people started. They had their little starter home, and then after a few years, my parents bought like a bigger home, like because the first one was a 2-bedroom. This little house, the starter home, was a 2-bedroom house, a master bedroom, and where I slept. And then they moved up to a 4-bedroom house. It was a 2-story 4-bedroom house. It was like moving up in the world, right, with an in-ground swimming pool and the whole shebang. And that was how you grew up. You grew into the middle class and upper middle class. But now that's just, I mean, like my parents, when they bought that 4-bedroom, 2-story house also in the Northridge area of the San Fernando Valley, this was in 73. So my dad was 30 and my mom was 28. No way a couple of that age today would be able to afford such a place. I mean, no fucking way.
It's going to be bad enough when you just have your BA, throwing in, like I said, a master's degree and an MBA. Yeah, you're going to be paying that shit off for a long time.
Yeah,
and that's the thing that worries me a lot, because you're number one, that is a dynamo for the economy. It is, but more importantly, the fact that you can already learn a lot of the skills that are necessary for maintaining a household sooner are now happening later. So like the idea of saving, The idea of, because we even went you're going to think this is trivial, but just having a home sooner, you're like, oh, I have to fix the air conditioner, or the insulation in the house, attending to things. When you're attending to something that you own, it's like you have an investment in making sure it maintains its value, even if it's just something as trivial as just wanting to be able to resell it later, or even just even what I would say is more interesting, the pride in having lived in something that's good, or that it looks good. That provides you with just skills of which manifest your investment in the world around you. When you're renting and you're a debtor and you literally become a transient to find the next job that will allow you to pay off this, that, and the other, it's all outsourced in a way. It's like, the landlord takes care of it, or I'm going to rent this kind of furniture. You never feel at home.
No skin
exactly.
in the game. Yeah.
That's to me the worrisome aspect, because I think the credentialization game plays into that as well. Like the time you could have been invested in a business or a company or whatever you were doing with the experience, you were doing your theory, you went to this class, you were waiting, I'm going to be able to get this nice job now. You're more and more divorced from the point of doing these kinds of jobs, which is to be better at what you're doing.
Yeah. No, I think that, look, bottom line, our society is worse than it was 50 years ago. It's a lot worse. And I'm talking about not like, racial divisions or some shit like that, some SJW nonsense. I'm talking about the ability to just get along, get on with life, and raise a family and have a happy life. It's just a lot harder, not because the jobs got exported, but also because you are expected certain things, the credentialism, that we all slid into it. We didn't sit around and democratically decide, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to expect everybody to get graduate degrees, and we're going to thereby force everybody to postpone having children and postpone having their first home by at least a decade so that they can get this education. We never made that decision as a society. We sort of like sleptwalked into it. And I think it's catastrophic because you aren't getting anything, you aren't contributing anything to the society by this credentialism. You're just not. I mean, if there was a compelling case to be made that because of all this education, quote unquote, the people are actually better off, well, then, okay, sure, it was worthwhile. But the people are not better off. The education that they're getting at these credential mills, universities, they're not actually learning anything. I mean, come on. Anybody who has an MBA who's listening to this shit, what did you actually learn in your graduate program that there was no way you could have learned any other way? Except for doctors, I can't imagine anything. Doctors and dentists. But, I mean, seriously, can you imagine anything that is, like, unique there?
No, you're absolutely right. And in fact, that's why I kind of laugh when people refer to an MBA as a professional degree, because I'm like, yeah, it kind of is, but it really isn't. I mean, it's like an MFA program in some regards. A doctor, yeah, you're actually learning the medical techniques you need. Yeah. That's almost like an apprenticeship program.
Yes, it is an apprenticeship program. Yeah,
exactly. And I'll do you one better for why I'm nervous about all this shit. All of this extra credentializing and accreditation and whatnot, it's adding fuel to the fire of the university system that we all hate as the SJW haven. All of the administrators, all of that whole attitude of like, universities doing all the things we hate them for doing. What do you think is subsidizing it? Extra degrees.
Yeah.
Of course. That's the fuel into the system.
It's not even the SJWs, it's the administrative layer. The administrative layer, it used to be that you'd have a couple of administrators for like 4 professors. Now it's reversed. You have this huge administrative class that is perfectly useless. It only exists to aggrandize itself, and the administrators are getting paid multiples of what professors are getting paid. And so it's not helping the system at all, and yet it's being paid for by these stupid fucking students. And
it's not really an educational system that's being made. It's almost like, and I'm going to use words straight out of my friend's mouth who went to either, it isn't even just the MBA programs, it's just an extreme version, but even undergrad was like that. We went to a country club for a few years. That's what it felt like. We were away from work. Yeah, and in University of Chicago, in my instance, I would say the classes were very rigorous and interesting, albeit whatnot. But the lifestyle was not heavy-handed, and I even said to myself, "Look, the workload I'm getting here, compared to high school, is barely the same. It's probably a little bit easier to tell you the truth. And then, you go to MBAs or any kind of advanced degree, people are saying like, yeah, it was like we had 2 years of like having fun, and eventually, we'll get you do your summer internship between the 2 years, and then you get into a bigger job. It's like, yeah, it's a program that we want you to feel comfortable in. And what does that incentivize? Well, what makes you feel comfortable? I don't like being offended, or I want to not be bothered by people challenging me in any kind of way. It's like, okay, say no more. That money's going to keep coming in if we just make people not complain about the university, that kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering how we can change this problem, the situation, change it around.
Well, I've long said that the biggest first step to do is stop with the rhetoric of saying we're going to figure out ways to influence and semi-subsidize kids going to universities to get their BA programs. Like, like the way we do it is we don't even really give grants per se. Some of that is grants, but it's usually like FABSB loans, all those kind of, supposedly like cheaper loans you can get to go to school. You're still loaning money and paying it out. Yeah. It's just the government makes sure you have a little lower interest. I'd say stop doing that. Instead, if you want to invest in anything, it's like, okay, you kids who have some chance for technical skills, you're going to a fucking, like I said, apprenticeship program, and you're going to do that shit. We're not going to just say everybody's getting a BA or everything. So stop that inflation right then and there. What I would hope would happen from that is once you reduce the number of people who have a BAs with their hands out saying, give me a job, you then have fewer people to choose from for the quote unquote professional job. So it's a little bit easier to figure out who's right and who's appropriate for it. And then the necessity for those advanced degrees weakens more and more and more. Is that pie in the sky thinking? Probably, but at least it's a start. I certainly don't think putting, this idea that everybody needs a BA. That's not true. We need people who can do things. We don't need degrees.
Well, it's I guess I'm much more black-pilled on it. I don't see a way to put the genie back in the bottle, except if there was some sort of cataclysm that would, just blow the whole thing out of the water. But I honestly don't see how we can go back, because I don't think anybody. Because, see, hope is a dangerous thing. It's an exceedingly dangerous thing. If you hope or think or believe that getting an MBA, getting a BA, going into debt for $100,000 to get an Ivy League degree will bring you a better life, if you just hope it, you'll do it. And there'll be the people around to dangle the cash so that you can do it, so that you can be a debt slave for the rest of your life, and you'll go through it. And you won't believe the people who have been there, who are telling you, don't do it. It's just you're going to be a debt slave and you're not going to get much out of it. You'll only believe them once you've experienced it. Look, I went to an Ivy League school. If I had not gone and somebody had told me, don't do it, you'll be well, in my case, I was never a debt slave, but suppose I had been, don't do it, you'll be a debt slave, I wouldn't have believed them. I would not have believed them. And if I'd been told that, I would have thought to myself, well, maybe I will be a debt slave, but I'll be so clever, I'll figure out a way to pay off my debts really fast, and so I won't be a debt slave. Which is pie in the sky thinking. But, it's based on hope. When Barack Obama went on and on about hope and change, right? I thought this motherfucker is playing with fire. Because when you talk about hope and change, hope and change, hope and change, see, people's expectations rise and you cannot meet them. Okay?
Right.
And eventually it's going to backfire on you. And this fucking asshole, I hate Obama. And I expect us to do, at some point, like a serious reappraisal of his presidency, starting really rigorous from top to bottom. But that's not this episode. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, see, when this asshole started talking about hope and change, I thought this fucker is playing with fire. Because if you're promising something, if you're raising people's hopes that some intractable problem will be solved, even if you're just gesturing towards it and you're getting people's hopes up, eventually when you fail to deliver, it's going to be a fucking disaster. And I think that a lot of the shit that's going on with black people today is precisely that. I know that we've taken the conversation in a different direction, but...
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't even think it's that far removed, because look at Obama's background. He is the accreditation accumulator par excellence. Yeah. He never really practiced law, but he went to Columbia undergraduate. Then he went to Harvard MBA. I'm sorry, not MBA, Harvard law. He was was the president of whatever that law publication that
the law
they
review,
do.
Yeah.
Exactly. He never really practiced law. He immediately became a community organizer, became a local politician, and eventually went up. The man is an epitome of not having really achieved any practical sense anything.
No.
But because he had all these credentials, I remember people saying like, "Oh, isn't it wonderful? We have an intellectual running things
He
now."
wasn't an
And that was
intellectual.
the blemish of the University of Chicago, and I'll say this time and time again, was we hired that motherfucker to teach constitutional law.
Yeah.
We should have never let that family through the door.
No. He was. God. Okay, I don't want to talk about Obama because I do want to do an episode on just Obama. But I will say this: I think that Obama hope is so dangerous. See, because especially when it's just like hope, just tossing hope out the window. At the time that it was happening, I thought this isn't such a good idea in 2008. But I didn't really realize how fucking dangerous it was until like some time had passed. It's just you know what I'm saying? I mean, does this make any sense to you?
Well, it does. Well, I'll tell you why hope and these credential programs are similar, which is you're betting on, you're buying yourself an option of potential, right? You're saying, hey, this allows me to say there's a potential that I'll do some good later on. That's hope, or something good will happen later on. I bought into hope, which means I'm not executing anything in the here and now. The hope is looking to the future, just practical shit's happening right now. What are you going to do about it? There's no hope in, laying down the railroad track to make sure the fucking train doesn't collapse. That's just building the fucking railroad track. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the idea that you're projecting yourself into the future, well, yes, to a certain extent we have to do that because you figure out what your goals are and you move forward. But there's a certain degree of like physical action in the here and now that hope, when taken to its extremes, just fucking flushes down the toilet. I broke your brain.
Yeah, you did. You did like. Oh, look. I'm dying to talk about Obama, but right now I'm not prepared for it.
No. I get it.
And so it's like, I just want to leave with one thought. You know that in Harvard law, right, in law circles, well, all those guys, they're big brains. I mean, you can't be a complete idiot to get into Harvard law, right? And he was surrounded by big brains, and people in his circle started laughing at the Obamometer. Okay, that's what they called it. And I don't know if you ever heard the term.
No, I haven't. I'm dying to hear.
Okay, the Obamometer was this idea that, see, there'd be a discussion about whatever. And then at the end of it, in a very pedantic way almost, he would like sum up every position and try to wrap it in a bow. And the Obamometer was to the degree that he got everybody to like him. Okay. And there are like a lot of people. One of the people who saw him, who was his classmate, who saw him up close and personal, writes on Naked Capitalism. I think Kathy O'Neill, and everybody like laughed at him, and everybody thought that he was just a pompous shit, and they didn't think that he had a great legal mind, and that the only reason he'd been hired to. I mean, they don't say it because they're all good liberals, but reading between the lines, you get the sense that the only reason he got picked to head the Harvard Law Review was because he was black. He was a good-looking, well-spoken young black man with a tidy afro. And by the way, whenever they talk about black people, and they say he's so well-spoken, it's just, I always think it's such it's code, basically. It's basically saying, okay, he's not like a retard from the ghetto. That's what it basically.
Well, even black people hate that. They say they reinterpret that, I think, correctly to say what we're really saying is he sounds white, to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's what they're basically saying. It's funny as fuck, because even the most anti-racist, liberal, card-carrying SJW, it'll slip out. They'll say it. He's very well spoken. What the fuck does it mean? When I think of you, Benway, I don't think of you as well-spoken. I think, it's not like the first quality that springs to mind. And I'm talking to you, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, he's a smart guy. Is he well-spoken? Well, yeah, but that's like number 20 on my list of qualities about you. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say I'm a white nigger. I get it.
You're one of Sargon's boys, yeah. The white Negro, that's you. Or white Negro or white nigger? Which do you prefer? Are you a Norman Baylor white Negro or a Sargon of Akkad white nigger?
Yeah, acting like a bunch of niggas. Seriously?
Like a bunch of white niggas. Oh man,
Yeah.
that was funny.
Sorry, I couldn't help.
No. That shit. That. Here's something else. Like when you know that you want to be a politician. Okay, clearly Obama, for example, Obamometer, right? The son of a bitch knew he wanted to be in politics, and so he played that game from the get go. Oh, you want to hear something funny? I don't mind sharing it on the podcast because nobody listens to this podcast. So, I got a friend of mine. He's plugged in, really plugged in. Okay, and he gave me I mean, we touched base. I called him, but we hadn't spoken in a while, and we were talking and shooting this shit and catching up and blah blah. And he's really plugged in. And so he says to me, "What would you think if it came out that Obama is gay?" And I'm like, "Why are you asking me?" And he said, "No, I'm just asking what reaction would you have?" And I said to him, "Well, in the current contemporary society, I don't think anybody would really say anything. I think that for the most part, people would be." And let me ask you that, Benway, what do you think would happen if, hypothetically, if Obama came out as gay?
Honestly, I'm genuinely believe this, no one would probably give a fuck.
Yeah. Okay.
But because number one, the presidency is over. Two,
What do you mean
his crowd?
Oh, his presidency is over. You mean?
Yeah, exactly. His presidency is over. Two, his crowd, is just accustomed to all sorts of things like that.
He's not a conservative Christian.
He may get a couple of claps to say, "Oh, how wonderful, he was really gay." That last 2 days. I mean, it'd be like they've already made their assessment as to his worth for the left wing of standard American politics. So it would be enough. And on our side would be like, have a couple of days of saying, "Hey, the fag was a fag," kind of things like that. It'd just be forgotten.
Yeah. Okay, well, he floated this idea by me, and his scuttlebutt is that he's got a side action, and that it's getting serious.
Well, what would be really funny, especially here's what would make that interesting.
What?
Let's say Michelle Obama is running for president.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say she's doing well, and she's like, "Oh, we're going to be this, that, and the other." And then it turns out, she can't even keep Obama on the porch. Not only Hillary worried that Bill's fucking around somebody in his library, Obama's doing the same thing, but it's with, someone even more butch than she is.
No, well,
that would be interesting.
That might be
that
interesting.
could happen.
But no. I mean, the word is that this is going to be happening in the next, anywhere between the next 6 to 18 months. Okay.
Color me skeptical, but if we're right, I owe you a Coke.
Yeah. No, I prefer a Happy Meal, but thanks for the thought. No. Well, that apparently is the scuttlebutt. That it'll happen in the next 6 to 18 months, something like that. Before the end of 2019. So I just it could be bullshit. Okay, though there is that thing that back in the day he seriously contemplated whether to be gay, because he was very close to some professor who was gay at the University of Chicago. You know that, or University of Chicago, some professor somewhere, or at Columbia.
Maybe at Columbia, that would have been more. That would have made more sense.
Yeah, at Columbia, yeah. Which I found just bizarre because I would never in my life have I sat down and thought to myself, well, should I be gay or should I be straight? It's just I decide other things like do I want a cheeseburger or a Big Mac? Do I want a Coke or Fanta? I never sit down and think to myself, do I want to be gay or straight? It just no.
So you're saying he was wondering which credentials would do him better, the upright family man, or the gay revolutionary. I don't know.
Yeah, apparently. But anyway, going back to the issue is that Obama, like from the get-go, he wanted to be a politician, right? And he acted as such. And his classmates made fun of him about the Obamometer, and how he was always trying to take the temperature. Oh, that was it. He would always take the temperature of the room. Okay, that was this thing of always taking the temperature of the room and always, being medium cool with everybody, being just the exact right temperature with everyone, so that everybody got a good impression of him, but never actually saying anything, never actually doing anything, just, taking the temperature of the room and delivering what they expected, but never stepping out of line, never saying anything genuine. Okay, that was the point. I'd actually forgotten where the term had come from, but it was that. A guy who's a politician always knows he's a politician, right? And he watches his words, or perhaps he's just simply somebody who watches his words constantly and says, "Hey, maybe I could be a politician." People, because I keep my cards close to the vest, people think that I'm a leader, quote unquote, and maybe. Okay, that's one thing, but see, um, in a democracy, you cannot afford to speak your mind if you want political power. Because if you speak your mind, you're going to alienate somebody. So the only way to really acquire political power is to keep your fucking mouth shut. The only people who are good at keeping their mouth shut are people who are psychos or people who don't have anything going on in their head. And so we elected, Obama, and he doesn't have anything going on in his head. I don't think he's a psychopath. I think he's just an empty suit. I think that there's nothing
No,
there.
I always had that feeling that there was, and I get that with a lot of, especially on the left wing politicians, that there's a lot less there than they're pretending.
Oh yeah.
The reason I think that is because they make a point of saying our people are so smart, so smart. So I'm like, okay, well, really, I cross my arms across my chest and say, we'll see about that. So my hackles are up sooner because the right wing, there's vacuous people on the right, but they don't make a virtue, out of it.
Yeah.
And again, it's not unrelated, to this whole credentializing thing. Everybody thinks that there's these little quick totems of capability mean more than they actually mean.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, here's what's really funny about all of this. The whole crisis of education that we're talking about, this whole accreditation thing, arguably one of the main causes of it is that kind of vacuous thinking, which is short term, tell people what they want to hear, we'll make policies to that effect. Then the long term, hey, we're building a fucking garden here and we have to plant seeds that will take decades, if not generations, to grow to where we want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the issue, because it reinforces it.
Yeah, my thinking is this. I've always thought that education should be along these lines, that you have a general basic education until the age of like 13, 15. And then around that age, you start getting sorted out, okay? Like 15, you sort of like get a sense of, high school freshman. You get a sense of, they got any brains or them or not. Because there's one thing of being stupid and another thing being lazy. Because, lots of, especially smart kids, are lazy as fuck because they can skate on their brains. They're smart enough that just by glancing at shit, they get the gist of it and do okay in exams, right? And then they're legitimately stupid people. But the point I'm trying to make is that, see, they get to the age of 15, say, and then you start like sorting them out. Okay, let's have, higher education kids who will be the doctors and, the engineers, what have you. And then, the craftspeople. And let's just do it that way. And public education, it should be this, that by age 18, if you're going to be a tradesman, like a plumber or whatever, you are already on the job at 18. Or if not on the job at 18, you're like in some sort of apprenticeship program or something along those lines. This endless education, it's catastrophic because it's eating away at fertile years of women. That's the bottom line issue. It's
one of my professors says something very strongly on these lines. What's going on here? You are delaying the time you need to make a call as to what you're doing with your life.
Yeah.
And those are precious years. Those 5 years, however many years it's going to be on top of everything, you can't get those back.
No, and they're important years. They're really important years for a lot of things that you want to be doing. And also, it's not just that you're postponing it. You're postponing it in a country club setting. So it foments the idea of not even thinking about these problems. It's not that you're contemplating these problems from a lofty Ivy League tower and thinking them and making the right decisions. No, you're kicking the can down the road. You're ignoring the problem as opposed to dealing with it and facing it. And so I think it's catastrophic because you're right. College is fucking country club time. In my school, but this is back in the 90s, okay, it was impossible to fail. I actually tried, I think. There was this one class on Milton that I took just because I wanted to get a minor in English. And so I needed to fucking take Milton. I didn't read fucking Milton. And I got like a C plus or something.
Which is the lowest grade you'll ever get in college, by the way, just stressing.
Yeah. I didn't do fucking jack shit. I mean, my papers were just embarrassing. And yeah, and I didn't even buy the book. I remember I like pleaded poverty to my professor. He gave me a copy of the fucking, right? Because I was just a lazy bum. Well, actually, I was just not interested, and at the time, I was just doing stuff that was more important to me, you know. And I just wanted to get this sort of like, again, credentialism. I wanted the minor just for my ego, okay.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I just needed to take this fucking course. And it's pretty retrospectively, I should have paid more attention to Milton, but okay, that's water under the bridge, spilt milk. But the point I'm trying to make is that, see, it was impossible for me to fail. You had to go out of your fucking way to fail at my school back in the 90s. I can't even imagine what it's like now. Nobody fucking fails. In South America, you can fail easily. You can fail really fucking easily because they want you to fail, because they want to thin the herd. In Argentine universities, by law, everybody can go into university by law. Okay, so what's the first year of Argentine university? Culling the herd. The whole point is that they try to fail 90% of the class. Okay, because they have this stupid social policy that everybody gets to go to college. Fine, everybody gets to go to college. Then the professors have to, make it so that they're the sieve through which all the students either they pass, the ones who can actually make it, or they get thrown away. And that's what happens. And so you have all these kids who go to college in Argentina. I don't know if the system is still like that. It was back in my day. And all these kids, they're like, they're going, oh, I'm in university. And it was just a disaster, and they had to pay. It was just a full blown disaster. It's a lack of clear social planning. And
well, here's the thing. The other thing that's telling here. Remember when we said that, a few moments ago, that the whole idea of getting all these extra accreditations delays the decisions you need to make about what you're going to do with your life.
Yeah, sure.
And the delay in thinking. That is a phenomenon that is integral with the way democracy plays itself out in general.
No.
What is the best way of describing? No, because what is the best way of describing democratic decision making? Pushing the can down the line so that you can deal with it later,
or somebody else deals with it. Yeah. No, I
somebody
disagree.
else deals with it. Yeah.
I think it has to do with capitalism, or perhaps it's a combination of the two. But my thinking is this: see, who's the dream customer of mainstream neoliberal capitalism? Children. Children. Think about it, because children have no responsibilities, and they get an allowance, and they blow their allowance on shit, whatever strikes their fancy, right? So mainstream capitalism, in a very real sense, wants more children, wants people with less self-control and more beholden to their whims. That's young adults. So it wants young adults. Is it surprising that you have 45, 50-year-old people running around dressed up as if they were still in college and acting as if they were still in college? And buying whatever the fuck strikes their fancy? It's because of that. It's a capitalism that encourages that. Or am I being too much of a commie and you disagree?
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, yes, but I mean, capitalism is still functioning in the 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s, when you really didn't have that phenomenon.
Okay, well, neoliberal economic.
Fair enough.
The current economic paradigm that we have. I mean, we're going to call it neoliberalism because it's that there was something else. There was a sense in the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s that you were a grown-up. There was a moment when you tipped over and you were a grown-up. And people aspired to be a grown-up. Nobody aspires to be a grown-up today, And people, you dress like a grown-up and people say, oh, he's a fuddy-duddy, which I don't quite understand, but whatever the fuck. Okay, I mean, I don't want to, right now, okay, it's a holiday. I'm dressed in a T-shirt and shorts, and a baseball cap, right? Yeah, sure, I look like a fucking undergrad. But this isn't my usual dress. You've seen
and you're not in society, technically speaking, at this point, right? You're not out and about.
Oh, no, I'm just running around.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so that's a different story completely.
Yeah, exactly. But you are expected to act that way, which is fucking insane. Okay, but if everybody's a kidult, everybody's a child, and so yeah, you get milked by the system. Look, the thing is, I feel as if so much of this credentialism that we're talking about, and all of this other shit is just our current form of capitalism that has just gotten away from us. It's become an end in itself, as opposed to being a mechanism that is useful to the society that we have to be grown up about and adult enough to decide what we want that society to be. But it's sort of like we've decided, okay, we'll just let capitalism be. It's sort of like a woodworker who decides that this very useful tool, his table saw, it's just going to run the shop, and that there's going to be no control. If the table saw wants to do whatever, let the table saw do whatever. It's the will of the table saw. It's capitalism in action. That seems to be the motto going on, and people just let capitalism run riot, as opposed to controlling capitalism and directing it towards things that we actually want as a society, and directing it away from things that we certainly do not want, such as credentialism, which I think is, it doesn't benefit society. It benefits certain people. Yeah, and you could say, well, it's a free market. Yeah, but it's not a free market that we really want now, is it? I'm ranting, I know.
No. I agree with you. It's not something we want. In fact, here's something that will never happen, but I think would be great to happen. What if someone just turned around and said, you know what? All state universities will be closed down.
Dream on, but okay.
But imagine, seriously, because I would say that's the worst element of it. Because, let's not kid ourselves. The Ivy League and the elite private universities are where you get the leadership class. Undemocratically, yes, but it still comes from there.
Yeah.
The state schools aren't giving you that, yet they're still operating like the Ivy League and the liberal arts schools or whatnot. Yeah. So this is the source of the problem in some ways. Those funds should be, going to more practical matters. So why don't we, in theory, what if we just got rid of them completely? The thing is, we can't. Yeah. Ironically enough, because, and here's why I bring it up. Because we're talking about capitalism being the driver of this. Because, yeah, it is. All those loans, people are making a lot of money off of it. The university's still a business. But it's a state-run business. Mm-hmm. The driving force behind it, especially education spending, it's a liberal bugaboo. Republicans go along with it. But it's basically, that's their hobby horse. So funny enough, the people whose original impetus was to challenge the capitalism's indifference to people are actually those who've just made a new market for capitalism and made it worse. I'm ranting, but that to me is why we'll not find a solution, because those who are professing the solution out of it are actually the very useful idiots who just make capitalism even more successful. It's successful on its own money-making terms, not successful for the society.
Yeah. I don't know. I just know that we're in a hell of a fix. Look, I honestly feel that we are, as a society, the Western democracies are just collapsing. Because this is how I look at it. We're talking about this credentialism shit, right? And what I said at the very beginning of this conversation still applies, which is this yearning for credentials, pointlessly, needlessly, is making women especially have children later and later in life. Later children means fewer children. I mean, if a woman has a child at 21, say, she is likely to have 2 or 3 or 4 children before menopause. A woman starts having children at 30. She'll be lucky if she has 2. This is what's influencing reproductive rates. And this is influencing the fact that in all of the Western democracies, they're far below replacement levels. Replacement levels are 2.2 children per woman. And right now, they're hovering around, like 1.5, 1.6 on average across the Western democracies, right?
It's below the 2.2,
yeah. It's substantially below the 2.2. Okay, so this is why we have, in the yearning for maintaining GDP, you've got all these people importing immigrants from the Middle East and wherever the hell else, Africa and so forth. And so this is catastrophic because you're having the population being replaced, and it is being replaced. Okay, anybody who claims different, they're just not looking at the demographic reality. I mean, it's a demographic reality. It's not racist. It's not, Nazis are dreaming this shit up. It's just look at the numbers. It's just a numbers problem. That's all it is. And if you have a population, a native population, that is substantially below replacement levels, and you are, in order to maintain GDP, maintain the number of people in the society, you are importing foreign workers who have a much higher replacement level, infant natality, right? Natality, rather.
Yep.
it's inevitable what's going to happen. This is just it's not controversial. I don't understand why it's controversial. Or, well, I know why it's controversial because the left don't want to look at it, and so in order to not look at something, they call it racist. Yeah, sure. Nazis. Yeah, the Nazis think that the sky is blue. Fucking evil fuckers. Yeah, I know. Okay, so to go on with this rant and the point I'm trying to make. It's this drive to credentialism that is making women postpone having children until their window is so narrow, their fertility window is so narrowed, that they're only going to have one and maybe two, hence the 1.6 children per woman in the Western democracies that we currently have. We need to change that. We need to change that and have women not get this empty credentialism, not go to school. And so, but how do you say that? How do you promulgate that policy? If you promulgate that policy by saying, don't get a degree because you'll have children later, no, it's sexist, it's this and this. So we on the dissident right have to come up with a better focus. And I think that the better focus is saying, do you want to be a debt slave? I think that that's the approach. I think that that is one of the key problems, not the key problems, but it's certainly one of the necessary and sufficient conditions that is creating the problem of replacement. And we should be focused on that, on sort of like destroying college by saying it's worthless and that you become a debt slave. I don't see any other solution that is viable in terms of convincing people not to do it. You see what I mean? Because you have to convince them to not go to college. How do you do that? I think that this is the only way. Do you see any other viable alternative?
Well, I would even say an even bigger issue related to what you just said about debt slavery is, stop living off of debt, period. Because it's even if you took college to the side, we still, operate under the, leverage model, which is borrow everything and then kind of work, just you'll live with it. I even see people saying like, what you should do with a home is just take out a home equity line because that's just value locked in your home.
That's
kind
so
of thing.
stupid.
So it's that idea is permeating well above and beyond even college itself. So you got to work through that, and then the college situation is as a species of that genus. So I don't know how to fix it because I just frankly think we're too selfish.
Okay, so that leads us to the black pill of like, okay, fuck it, we can't fix this thing. Let's let it break. Let's let it shatter into a million pieces and see what happens in the collapse.
Yeah, that's my accelerationist approach at times. Just like let the collapse come sooner. We'll figure it out. Necessity will figure it out sooner. Because frankly, I just don't know how you're not going to do it. Because like I said, the things I laid out, I'd love to do, like shut down the state schools, stop funding for shit that just creates more debt amongst people. Ain't going to happen under the current conditions. So you kind of have to wait for an emergency situation to kind of make itself go. And that's scary because nobody wants to live in an emergency situation. It's not fun. It's not easy. It's scary. But guess what? It's already not fun, not easy, and kind of scary. So how much worse could it be? A lot worse, but never answer that question.
No, I mean, I'm just, how can I put it? I see so many problems that are just, who said this, the managing the decay? Who said that line? Because it's been a line that I've been hearing a lot as of late, and I've been thinking about it. That we're simply managing the decay.
I don't know who owned it, but I've heard it many times, and I just think it's the right attitude. It's the Clintonista attitude. It's the managerial class attitude. Because in addition to everything else, what does managing the decay say? My group of people are in charge of making the decisions.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't focus on the word managing. I focus on not the verb, on the noun, the decay. That's the thing that has me, my hair on end. I don't care who's managing things, so long as it's not managing a decay. If they say we're managing the growth, I'm all for it. Growth, and not necessarily in just flat GDP, but like in other measures, in other metrics. But yeah, it just seems that the whole shithouse is going up in flames. And it's so funny that line that the whole shithouse is going up in flames. That was Jim Morrison back in '67, right, or '68, right? With the Roadhouse Blues.
Mm-hmm.
Great performance, right? Great singer. Whatever the fuck about the guy, but he was a great singer. And See, back in those days in the 60s, shit, they didn't even realize that they were far from going down. Okay? I mean, it was still going up, but now it really does feel like it. You know what I mean? And I think that
Yeah.
it's just fucking depressing. It's and you know what's so funny? Something else that struck me. I was reading this great book, The Silk Roads, which is like a history of like Central Asia. Okay, it's like basically the history of the world, but with the focus rather than it being on Europe, it's more towards the Middle East and Asia. It's really interesting, and sort of like
Right.
following the Silk Roads, that communication between East Asia and Western Europe. And it's a really interesting book. And it was talking about some civilization, and there was this whole, this managerial class. They weren't Mandarins because it wasn't in China; it was something else. But it's sort of like referring to this management class and what they did and how they sorted out. And then all of a sudden I realized, shit, I'm a child of one of those people. Okay, because yeah, sure, now it's like with computers and shit. It's a different mechanics and different clothing and different thing and different words for this particular class. But it's a class of functionaries. It's a class of managers, of mandarins who manage the society, manage it well or poorly, as the case may be. And it was like how can I put it? When you are observing an ancient civilization, it's very easy for you to delineate what was going on and to realize that, oh, this class or this group of people fucked it up and that's why it went downhill. When you're living in your own society with all the emotional baggage that belonging or not belonging, as the case may be, to the different social classes, the different social classes that need all of this credentialism to join, well, you have a harder time figuring out what the hell is going on and which class is fucking up. You see what I'm saying? My perspective
Yeah.
at this time is that our Mandarin class, not just the 1% or the 1% of the 1%, but the management class, the top 15, 20% of the population, they are fucking up. They are not providing for the bottom 80%. And the 80% are becoming exhausted dray horses. And there are two possibilities. Either the exhausted dray horses finally lie down and die, as some of them are. I witnessed the opioid epidemic. Or they start bucking and kicking and just making a whole fuss. It's one of two outcomes. Or maybe it'll be both outcomes to a greater or lesser extent. But one of the two outcomes will win out. And what do you think of this metaphor? You see what I'm saying? Because it
No,
seems...
it's right. No, you're right, because I mean, I live in the managerial class.
Mm-hmm.
I see what we can do and what we can't do.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to say I'll try and do better, but it's not just me; it's everybody. So I can't promise that. And I think that's going to be the situation. I mean, because let's be honest, like all that credentializing shit. What are we getting onto? Those are the mechanisms by which the managerial class perpetuates itself. And so if all of those problems we just talked about, the vapidity, the accumulation of debt to get them, the postponement of our life goals in order to think that these credentials will mean something, all of what that does to a person, that denaturing that happens, is embodied in the class that's in charge of making sure everything's running smoothly. So I'm sorry to tell you, we probably aren't going to be successful as of right now changing that. I'd love to say yes, but what can I say? I'm sorry.
Okay, great. So with that happy and cheerful thought, we'll call it a podcast. And so that's a depressing thought. I mean, I wish that we could end these podcasts on a happy note. It's all going to be okay. Podcast listeners, it's all going to be okay. Listen to your coach. It will all be better. See, soon the government will be giving out the little happy pills, and those happy pills will make you so happy, and you won't have a single nasty black pill thought in your pretty little head. It'll all be sunshine and unicorns and happy clouds, happy clouds. Like that Ross guy, the painter guy from public television. What's his face?
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross, may rest in peace. Lucky bastard. He's not witnessing the decay.
We don't have mistakes. We have happy accidents. And don't you bet? Yeah, that's everything. Everything going on right now is just a happy accident. And Coach, don't you criticize Xanax on us now? We already are.
Yeah, brought to you by Xanax and the good people at the Happy Pill Factory. Yeah. Okay, so we'll call it a day. And so on behalf of Dr. Benway, this is Coach Red Pill for the Coach and Benway podcast. Dr. Benway, why don't you take us out and sign us off?
Everybody stay away from State College and have a safe trip home.
Trip? Do you mean like an acid trip?
Well, I don't want to be the guy telling people how to take their adventures.
Okay, yeah. Don't do drugs.
Don't get caught doing drugs.
Don't get caught doing drugs. Yeah. Don't do drugs. Don't get caught.